I mean, there are a lot of legitimate safety concerns behind this technology.
Welcome back to the show. We've got new developments in the race to get autonomous trucks on U.S. roadways. As one company gets closer to launching in Texas, the U.S. DOT has unveiled new framework for automated vehicles. Joining us with details and analysis are Mark Schremmer and Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine. Gentlemen, good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Let's start with the DOT's latest move here on autonomous vehicles. It is a plan. It is a rough plan, I would say, Mark, but it does give us kind of an idea about what they're planning, and we can use this to kind of talk about other plans that are in the works. But this new framework, what do we know about it?
They announced a plan that there is a plan. That's basically what they've done.
Right.
And so we kind of have a framework of the framework that we don't fully have. But basically, kind of the intention of this is where we're kind of headed as far as autonomous vehicles and what the DOT plans to do. And the biggest takeaway, I think, from this is that they consider this to be a race against China, to be the first to deploy autonomous vehicles, and the U.S. Wants to win. And so for better or for worse, some of the things that we are dealing with right now is I think they are going to favor innovation over some of the regulation is some of the concern that we're seeing. But they're looking at trying to streamline things, but also just, kind of move this forward to that we would deploy soon and try to beat China in this race.
Yeah, and it's a plan for a plan. It's a framework of a framework.
Exactly.
And what we have here, I think, of note is they're putting three principles kind of on the front burner here. We talked about safety there, unleashing innovation, and I'll put that in quotes because that's how they're putting it here.
Exactly.
And then enabling commercial deployment of this as well. What we don't know, and Tyson, you can talk on this because you've looked at a different framework here. Again, we've got different frameworks kind of coming in and becoming one framework. But it is clear, and Mark alluded to this, that they are essentially giving these companies, I wouldn't say free rein, but they're giving them a lot of leeway when it comes to how they're going to go about doing this.
They're trying to simplify things for the most part. And a great example of that is, several years ago, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, they issued what's called a standing general order. And what that standing general order did was it required manufacturers of level 2 or higher autonomous vehicles to basically report crashes is what you have to do. It's a crash reporting database that if you go on NHTSA, anyone can access this. And so basically what it does is if you have a level 2 or higher, in level 2, think of the Tesla fully self-driving feature. That's level 2 and everything higher. If it gets in a crash, again, report it. So what this new framework does is that essentially it guts the reporting requirements. So in the past, anytime there was any type of incident, any kind whatsoever, it had to get reported. With this new framework, basically what the Department of Transportation wants to do is basically less severe crashes do not have to be reported. So unless there's like a fatality or an injury or something like that, these companies don't have to report it. So it severely guts this standing general order, and so far less reporting on the part of the manufacturers, which the manufacturers have been saying this entire time this SGO has been in place. The manufacturers have been saying it's burdensome, it's duplicative. They already have to do this type of reporting elsewhere, and so this is basically the DOT's response to the manufacturers saying, "All right, we hear you. We're going to less reporting, and so here you go. This is so it keeps it in place, but just far less details we're going to get from the database."
Yeah, which is not going to ease any concerns out there from people who are worried about the safety aspects of this and other aspects of this. And it does kind of give us a window into what they're thinking, right? And we were talking earlier, this is really, I think, for the most part, a response to a worry that China is outpacing us on this technology. So to make up for that, we're giving them all this relief, right?
Yeah, and that's always been it's been a legitimate concern with the autonomous vehicle industry, which is foreign countries, namely China, they're outpacing us as far as innovating in this technology, and a lot of them have been blaming the red tape and the regulatory landscape as a reason why we can't do more over here. But you also pointed out that people are also legitimately afraid, or at least have some hesitance with this new technology because we just don't know what it does, and it is kind of a scary technology to think of a moving vehicle, especially a large tractor trailer moving without a human being behind the wheel. And so I think what the DOT is trying to do here is find that compromise between how can we expedite innovation, compete with China, while also trying to address the fears of the American people behind the safety aspects of this. And so I don't know if this does that because, again, as Mark pointed out, we don't know the details of this quite yet. But hopefully it does find that balance because there are a lot of legitimate safety concerns behind this technology.
Well, and the concern I have, and I know you share it too, is a lack of oversight on this. We're talking reporting requirements, and you got a fender bender here and a fender bender there. If you're not reporting that, I understand it's probably not going to change the world. But when we don't have the information we need to know whether this technology is ultimately safe, and if we're not putting oversight on it, that's a pretty big concern.
Yeah, and one of the things that I know OIDA and others have kind of fought against is right now we have kind of this patchwork of regulations that Texas, thumbs up, or this state okay, and other states doing various things. And OIDA and others have wanted to remove that and wanted a national framework. The problem with this, the positive is they are moving toward a national framework, but if there's no teeth or really any regulations to that framework, or if it's too lax, if it's giving the companies too much cover and too much control for the sake of innovation of that idea, I think that's the question. I think moving toward a national standard is a positive thing, but we need there to be real kind of safety standards with that. And so far, I think so far the companies have had kind of more of the control there. I know that they've been complaining that they've wanted even more control, but if you looked at some of the things that so far that NHTSA has required, the stuff that has been voluntarily reported have looked more kind of like press releases or commercials than they have really explaining the details of this. And we're at a point where we could have before this month is over have driverless trucks out on Texas highways, and
Aurora.
And we you can be going down a Texas highway from Dallas to Houston if you're on I-45 here before in April or into May. You may turn to your right, and just see
an empty truck,
an 80,000-pound truck with nobody in it. I don't know if there'll be like an airplane where they'll put like an inflatable person in there. If anybody remembers that movie. But yeah, that just it's kind of crazy, and I think the public does demand some sort of transparency, and we need to know, that. Put all of those fears to rest, as I think is what the DOT should be doing, while still, I understand the need for innovation and we want to improve safety, but we need to know that it actually will improve safety. And I think there are so many questions. Tyson, I know you've done interviews with people, looking into these studies. There's a lot of genuine concerns out there still. Yeah.
In that database I talked about, researchers have been using that. I know actually we've been aired the interview on here where Missy Cummings did research on how she discovered how phantom braking is a major problem, and she was able to glean that information from this publicly available information. So when you get rid of that publicly available information, it gets rid of accountability for these autonomous vehicle manufacturers, and it prohibits or at least stifles research on the matter. So, I don't know how that's going to look in the future, but again, that's how important that database has been, again, for accountability and for research.
Mark, you talked about this month we are expecting to see Aurora deploy the autonomous trucks across Texas. We're still waiting to hear if that's happened or when it'll happen and what that's going to look like. But this, and we've talked about this before, this is a big step forward to what these autonomous truck companies are trying to do.
Yeah.
And this is a little bit different, right, from other things we've seen in other states in terms of testing. This is like the full thing, right? This is completely driverless.
So, and this is the thing. What's interesting about all of this is, I think it was right at the end of March, Tyson, I think you reported about the safety report or what, I forget exactly how they phrased it. Aurora put out, and they've said for a while now that they expect to deploy driverless trucks in Texas by the end of April. Here we are. And as we've been trying to seek out details about exactly what day that would be, and when Aurora is conveniently in a quiet period, citing SEC regulations because they're a publicly traded company at the end of a fiscal quarter here. And while all that might be true, it's also they probably don't want to have to talk about all of these things right now because there's so many things that are still in question. If you remember, they were denied an exemption from FMCSA regarding how they would deploy warning devices. Right now, the regulations require the driver to put out these triangles if they're off on a shoulder and do all of these specific things if they are pulled over. If there's no driver, you can't follow that regulation because it specifically says that. They wanted to do these beacons. That was denied. We don't have anything in the Federal Register of them asking for a new exemption. But right now, because they're in that quiet period, when asked, okay, how are you going to follow that regulation and still deploy? They can't talk right now. They're going to have a business review. I think it was May 8th that they will be explaining some things. I don't know if at that time that'll be telling us about that they've already deployed, or if that'll be announcing another delay. It's all remains to be seen. But no, I find it funny. In a former life, I was a sports reporter, and what I kind of remind this of the them in the quiet period not being able to talk reminds me of when you wanted to talk with a coach about whether a player was going to be able to play the next game, an injury, and then they would cite HIPAA regulations that they couldn't talk about it, which was true. And this, this quiet period may be true too of the SEC. But the coaches also didn't want to tell you whether the quarterback was going to be playing.
Both things can be true.
Yeah. So they were so happy to have this cover of like, I can't talk about it. Like, well, I'm not asking you to disclose the actual injury. I'm just want you to tell me whether this
he's going to play the game,
if he's going to play on Saturday or not. And so it kind of reminds me of that. And like I said, the timing is, I guess, fortunate for them that they can be quiet.
I mean, this all certainly feels, not to mix metaphors or whatever, but it feels like a runaway train. It feels like we're heading down this track at a very fast rate of speed.
Soul Asylum.
Yeah, there you go. Let's cue the music. But yeah, and again, I think we just don't have enough answers to these questions. And again, my concerns are, where is the oversight? I don't know. I don't have the answers. I guess you guys don't either. We'll wait and see what happens here. Tyson, Mark, we appreciate your time as always.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Scott.